The ground is packed down around him, so he's unable to escape. He turns his head and sees Nobunaga's men place a blunt bamboo saw next to him. And finally, they drive a sign into the ground that invited anyone walking past to pick up the saw and cut into this man's neck. Over the next 3 days, Sugitani's head...
Gang. If I were him, bro, I'd be so pissed off. Cause you telling me I hired a nigga to take you out? Hired a whole bunch of motherfuckers to take you out? And because not only do the moment that betrayed you couldn't take you out, but also because the marksman that I hired, who is supposed to be one of the greatest marksmen there is, can't hit a proper shot.
Scammer shots of the
I gotta keep a pop yeah. Put a red ribbon on me. Fly away on them bus, yeah. Headed up to commies.
Most disturbing revenge stories in history. Alright, now, let's see.
Oda Nobunaga and Sugitani Zenjubo. It's June 22nd, 1570, and a ninja is lying in the brush above a mountain pass, waiting for his target to arrive. His name is Sugitani Zenjubo, and he'd accepted a mission that few would ever dare. He was tasked with assassinating the most fearsome daimyo in all of Japan. For over 100 years, Japan had been engulfed in total war. Regional warlords had carved up the islands into 68 provinces, and every man who could raise an army was convinced that he would be the one who would one day rule the entire country. Alliances are shattered as quickly as they're made, as every ruler looks for their edge, and from amidst this chaos, a minor warlord named Oda Nobunaga had gone from a complete nobody to the most feared man Japan had ever seen. See, Oda was one of the first samurai to equip his army with the Tanegashima, an early matchlock gun. The results on the battlefield were horrifying, as anyone who fought him quickly saw their samurai fall without even having drawn their swords. Within the span of just 8 years, Oda had grown so powerful that he's able to place a puppet shogun into power. He was now one step closer to his dream of being the one to unify Japan. But not everyone was happy with this arrangement. On his campaign to install the new shogun, Oda trampled into Omi, the land controlled by the Rokaku clan, and their leader Yoshikata found this super disrespectful. He goes to battle with Oda, but is completely destroyed. To make sure the Rokaku know who's boss, Nobunaga drives Yoshikata from his lands, leaving him with nothing. Disgraced and enraged by the humiliation, the former daimyo dedicates all of his time to coming up with a plan to kill Nobunaga and take his revenge. And cut! Great job, Yoshikata. Really captured that pissed-off feeling of wanting revenge there. Thank you, narrator-san. But I do have worries that one day, my ancestors will not remember the many great things I have done. Well, luckily, with the help of today's sponsor, MyHeritage, that should not be an issue. Huh?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. You thought you had me. I figured this thing was like that.
Revenge! For years, he makes deals with rival clans and searches for the perfect assassin to complete his mission. He finds a master marksman named Sugitani Zenjubo, who is a crack shot. Oda being taken out by the very weapon he used to rise to power would be poetic justice, and so Sugitani is selected to be the one to take the warlord out. After years of careful planning, Yoshikata finally makes his move. En route to begin a new military campaign in Echizen, Nobunaga is betrayed and nearly killed by his allies, the Azai clan, and the warlord is forced to retreat to his stronghold in Gifu. The Azai clan, who had coordinated with Yoshikata, blocks the preferred path to Gifu and forces Nobunaga and his men to take a treacherous mountain pass. This is where Sugitani had been placed, and soon the assassin sees his target come into view. He watches as the warlord carefully makes his way through the pass, and as he gets closer, the ninja readies his rifle and patiently waits. Nobunaga unknowingly rides towards the man sent to murder him, and when he's within 20 meters, Sugitani pulls the trigger. Gunfire flashes from the brush, and a lead ball screams towards the warlord. He misses and quickly grabs his second prepared rifle. He fires again, and the second shot glances off Oda's armor and knocks him to the ground. The warlord's men turn and see the cloud of smoke and Sugitani running for his life. Nobunaga checks himself, and surprisingly, he's only suffered a scratch. He remounts his horse and returns home to his fortress in Gifu.
Ain't no way.
As he enters his castle, he's pretty pissed off at a couple of things. Most important,
Bro, this nigga is bro, you a master marksman and you can't hit a fucking shot? An accurate headshot? You missed the first one? And then you gonna turn around and hit him with a body shot? Oh my. That's he gotta be an ancestor of the shooter that shot Trump.
importantly, he wants to destroy the Azai clan for their betrayal. But also, he never forgets the gunman who tried to kill him, and decides he too will one day face his final judgment. He hunts down the Azai clan, and like a dog, he forces them into battle again and again for 3 years until they are wiped from history. The clan leaders are forced to commit seppuku, and some sources say that Nobunaga collects their heads and has their skulls lacquered and made into drinking cups. Around the same time, one of Nobunaga's lords finally finds and captures Sugitani Zenjubo, who had been hiding in a Buddhist monastery. Sugitani is brought before Nobunaga, where he confesses that he was hired by Yoshikata and the Rokaku clan. Having just done the pretty impressive skull-to-cups trick with the Azai clan, Nobunaga takes some time to think of a punishment that would be equally satisfying for his would-be assassin, and he comes up with probably one of the most insane execution methods I've ever heard of. Sugitani is led out to the main road, and he watches as Nobunaga's men dig a large hole. They place him into the hole and bury him up to his neck. The ground is packed down around him, so he's unable to escape. He turns his head and sees Nobunaga's men place a blunt bamboo saw next to him. And finally, they drive a sign into the ground that invited anyone walking past to pick up the saw and cut into this man's neck. Over the next 3 days, Sugitani's head...
Gang. If I were him, bro, I'd be so pissed off. Cause you telling me I hired a nigga to take you out? Hired a whole bunch of motherfuckers to take you out? And because not only do the moment that betrayed you couldn't take you out, but also because the marksman that I hired, who is supposed to be one of the greatest marksmen there is, can't hit a proper shot. So now, I ain't gonna lie, for 3 years he hunted down that same clan and kicked their ass for 3 years. So badly that he made their war leaders commit, what is it called again? Suzaku? Let me look it up. When Japanese people off themselves. Seppuku. I gotta put that shit in Google Translate. I gotta see what this is like. Seppuku. Yeah, seppuku.
was slowly sawed off by hundreds of people, each taking their turn as they walked into town. Oh, and just for funsies, 9 years later, Nobunaga's son eventually finds Yoshikata's son hiding in a Buddhist temple. This was the child of the guy who had hired Sugitani to assassinate his dad and had no direct involvement in the event. But Nobunaga's kid still decided to set the entire temple on fire, killing all 150 people inside.
Oh my god! Dang! No, oh, bro, I could not survive back in the day, especially in ancient Japan. Me, I get torture methods. I get sawed. Basically, niggas gets to cut me with a sharp ass blade, and I just gonna keep on getting cut in the same spot until I die. And that's not even enough for you. You find my son and like, no, I'm gonna take out his whole entire family. I don't want them to have nothing. He probably died thinking his family was gonna be alright. And now his son and him is gone too. This nigga Nobagana, I think that's what he said, is insane.
I guess that kind of stuff ran in the family. The tiger
Oh, that was
and
his son
Vladimir
that did that.
Markov. Okay, we've done some pretty crazy revenge stories on this channel, but this one might be one of the most unbelievable cases we've ever covered. It's a cold December evening in 1997, and Vladimir Markov is walking home to his cabin hungry again. The fall of the Soviet Union had been hard for him as he found himself out of work, and like many others in the far eastern outskirts of Siberia, he had now turned to illegal poaching to survive. Today's hunt was unsuccessful, and this was not good news. He hadn't eaten a real meal in a few days and was starving. But as he trudges through the snow, he sees something up ahead that catches his eye. His hunting dogs run ahead and start barking when they find a freshly killed boar. Markov runs up and is shocked by the state it's in. It is completely ravaged with broken bones protruding from its body and blood seeping from deep wounds. Nearby in the freshly fallen snow, Markov spots huge paw prints that are nearly the size of his hand. He knows that this was probably the work of a Siberian tiger, and a very large one at that. He looks around, but there's no sign of the beast. He looks down at the boar carcass, and with his stomach growling, he decides to quarter its hind legs. He can't turn away from a good meal, and he can trade the rest of the meat for essentials at the nearby logging camp. He slings the boar meat over his shoulder and resumes the trek home.
Oh no.
But there's a saying in the area.
They can smell the blood that's on you.
A tiger will see you 100 times before you see him once. And Markov had just unknowingly sealed his fate. Later that night in his cabin, Markov is cooking a piece of the boar for dinner. The wind is howling outside, and he assumes that's what's knocking over some of the equipment. But the noises become louder and more peculiar. His beehives come crashing down, and his steel pots and pans begin loudly dropping to the ground. His dogs begin barking, and as he listens carefully, he can hear someone or something outside. Markov grabs his gun as the noises outside grow louder and louder. It's now obvious that whatever's outside is huge, and it's slowly circling the poacher's cabin. Markov stares out at
How big is a Siberian tiger? How big is a Siberian tiger? Siberian tigers are the largest living cats in the world. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna kill the bug. One shot is not gonna kill that thing. One shot is not gonna kill that motherfucker. He gonna shoot that thing. And after he shoot that thing, it's over. It's over. He's not surviving. He's not surviving. I'll be shocked if he do survive. This says disturbing revenge stories. So I guess it was revenge. This was is a revenge. The tiger getting revenge on him? I don't know.
tiny hole he had cut to shoot deer that wandered near his home, and as he's straining to see out into the darkness, a giant yellow eye appears right in front of him. Markov thrusts the barrel of his gun through the hole and fires at the beast. The tiger lets out a blood-curdling roar and thrashes into the brush. Markov had found what had killed the boar he'd taken, or more accurately, it had found him. Vladimir spends the next day in his cabin, too afraid to leave, but he eventually runs out of food and is forced to leave his shelter. He opens the door carefully, and with the coast appearing to be clear, he rushes to a friend's house a few miles away. When he gets there, he barges into the house and begins smoking a cigarette to calm his nerves. He tells his friend what had happened the other night, and upon hearing the story, Markov's friend tells him that it sounds like this tiger is out for his head, and to leave so it doesn't show up here. Markov visits another friend and tells him the story of the tiger and asks him to help him go out and kill it. But this friend refuses and instead offers Markov a place to stay for the night. The poacher declines the offer and tries the nearby logging camp, but the men there also refuse. With
I would
no
refuse
help,
too.
Markov slowly begins his walk home in the
I can
darkness
help
of
your
night.
ass kill him, goddamn
He arrives
Siberian
back at the
tiger.
cabin and sees that it had been ravaged. His outhouse was destroyed, and his shed storing the boar leg was ripped open. He raises his shotgun and slowly walks towards his front door. As he draws closer, he finally sees what had caused all the destruction. Waiting for him was a giant male Siberian tiger. The beast sees Markov and begins rushing towards him. The poacher raises his gun and fires, hitting the beast in the front leg. Markov fumbles to load another shell, but before he can do that, the 500-pound tiger pounces on him. The poacher's screams echo in the woods, but no one is near enough to hear him. The following day, Markov's friend arrives at his cabin for their pre-planned fishing trip. As he approaches the hut, he notices blood on the ground and assumes that Markov did not do a good job cleaning up after his latest kill. But then, he notices a hat in the snow and sees a trail of blood leading into the woods. He follows the trail and finds pieces of his friend's clothing, and then a dismembered dog paw. Suddenly, he hears a sound up ahead, a low growl, and he runs back to Markov's cabin. He travels down to the logging camp to call the authorities, who arrive the following day. A team from Inspection Tiger, led by a man named Trush, arrives and finds what appears to be a pile of laundry, until closer inspection. This pile was the remains of Markov. His boots were found with bones protruding from them. Nearby, his frozen, headless body was found eviscerated with one of his arms missing, and a few steps away, they find the remains of Markov's head, whose face had been eaten clean off. Trush and his team inspect Markov's cabin and find everything that would have had Markov's scent on it torn to pieces. The boar leg that was hanging outside was also missing. Trush finds a patch of melted snow and droppings near the cabin and concludes...
Bro, I couldn't live in no other countries like this, bro. Just the thought of this shit, it just... Bro, I would not survive. The fuck is he playing? Oh, this is 2K45. Bro, if I see a fucking Siberian tiger, I'll probably end it all. I'd rather end just a headshot. I'd rather kill myself to deal with that motherfucker. He shot a shot at that motherfucker, and that motherfucker still said, I'm not fucking with no animal like that. We humans supposed to be the apex predator. Goddamn, nigga. I'm ready to go. I hear voices in my head, they talk to me, I understand.
that the tiger had returned and waited for Markov for 2 days. Trush is shocked by the findings. He knows that tigers can be dangerous, but most often will only attack in self-defense. This one, however, seemed to ignore all the other humans in the area and was particularly interested in only killing Markov. In the following days, the tiger stalks another man to his home and kills and eats him in a similarly brutal fashion. Trush and his team are sent out to take the animal down. They eventually find the tiger, and when it's cornered, it attacks and nearly kills Trush before his men shoot it dead. Upon inspection of the tiger's body, they find that its front leg had been severely injured by Markov's shot and had become infected. This injury probably prevented it from hunting its normal prey, forcing it to kill its second victim. But even with that discovery, the evidence at Markov's cabin was overwhelmingly clear, and Trush's official report stated that the tiger had hunted and killed Markov for revenge for stealing his meal. Charles II and Oliver Cromwell.
I ain't from lie though. I don't blame him for stealing that joint because you gotta do. You haven't ate in how long? So that just means he at his hungriest. You got to do whatever you got to do to get your meal. For real, you got to do what you got to do to get your meal. So I don't think he would, if he wasn't hungry like he was, I don't think he would have grabbed it. I think he would have just walked off and not grabbed it. Because me, bro, if I see a freshly killed animal and it's not human killed, I'm not fucking with it. But that's just me, bro. I don't hunt. I don't do anything, bro.
It's September 6th, 1651, and the 21-year-old Charles II is hiding in the branches of an oak tree in the English countryside. He stares through the leaves as parliamentary soldiers search the area for him. He knows that they're all hoping to be the man who captures the former Crown Prince of England. 3 days ago, in an attempt to retake his father's throne, Charles had led a group of loyalists and allied Scottish soldiers into battle at Worcester. The Parliament's new model army, led by a 42-year-old former farmer named Oliver Cromwell, vastly outnumbered them, and in the span of just 10 hours, 3,000 of his men were killed and another 10,000 were captured. As he desperately clings to a branch, he can't help but think that this was not how his life was supposed to turn out, and it was all Cromwell's fault. See, 10 years earlier, his father, Charles I, the King of England, had stormed into Parliament looking to arrest 5 of its members. By this time, Protestantism had swept through the...
Bro, of course, bro. Of course, bro. See, some parents, bro, they gotta think, bro. The things you do and whatnot will fall onto your child. Like it's less like what your child do falls on you. It's more if what you do gonna fall onto your child. So you being so let's take for instance. You a son of a dictator who back in his prime was a horrible dictator and whatnot. Then he passed away while you was still young, and now you growing up, and now you got to deal with his bullshit because he was on that bullshit. You feel me?
Kingdom, and with it, the idea that the king had the divine right to rule had been shattered amongst the increasingly Protestant parliament. The MPs had limited the king's power, taking away his rights to tax people without their permission, and the right to arrest anyone he wanted to. What good is being a king if you can't do whatever you want? After years of denying his request to increase taxes, Charles I had had enough, and was looking to remind everyone who the real king was. But the men he was looking for that day were all tipped off and were not there. And instead of solving the problem, this act of storming into Parliament kicks off the English Civil War. Without nobles with military experience, Parliament promotes its members to leadership positions in their army, and one of them, an MP from Cambridgeshire named Oliver Cromwell, turns out to be an absolute military genius. Driven by a fanatical Puritan faith and convinced he is an instrument of God's will on earth, Cromwell builds a cavalry regiment that tears through the royalist army. By 1646, King Charles I was defeated and ended up a political prisoner of the Scots. While in captivity, Charles secretly makes a deal with the Scots and convinces them to attack England and help him regain his throne. This attempt is again crushed by Cromwell, who then warns Parliament that the king cannot be trusted and that he must be dealt with once and for all. And so, on January 30th, 1649...
Oh wait, that's not a guarantee.
Charles I is led outside the banqueting house in London and publicly beheaded in front of a crowd.
Bro, the crazy thing about this, bro, what if somebody not strong enough to cut your shit open with one chop? Just imagine how grueling the pain could be, bro. If the person with the axe, I ain't gonna lie, if niggas back then really was that slimy, that grimy, they'll get a dude that ain't that strong and just let him go. Multiple times. Cause he gonna take like a regular average dude who don't got that much strength on him. Probably like 3 or 4 swings, max 5, to get the head fully cut off. So he lucky he had somebody with a little bit of strength on him.
Charles II got news of his father's execution, and with his future hanging by a thread, he had scrambled to build an army to reclaim his throne. But his defeat at Worcester at the hands of Cromwell was decisive and had ended all hopes of continuing his family's royal legacy. Night falls, and Charles II watches as the last of the soldiers leave the area. He climbs down, and under the cover of night, makes a break for it. The former crown prince has a bounty placed on his head, and he's hunted across England for 6 weeks. He cuts his hair and dirties his face to hide amongst the commoners until finally he manages to escape to France with just a few of his most loyal men. For the next 9 years, he lives on the run in France and Belgium as Cromwell and the Parliament try to extradite him back to England.
So he's going to
He's
get revenge
broke,
for his
and his
father?
few men who remain loyal often go without food or pay. During his exile, Charles gets updates on the state of his homeland. Cromwell was installed as Lord Protector, a position initially designed to function like a modern-day prime minister of a representative government. But things don't turn out like everyone hoped. Cromwell soon becomes a tyrant and leads a genocidal campaign in Ireland that causes mass famine and wipes out somewhere between 20 to 40% of the Irish population. He goes on to silence the Levelers, a group of MPs who were pushing for equal rights and freedoms for all free men, by killing everyone who opposed him in a churchyard. And soon, he dissolves Parliament, making himself the supreme ruler of the land, just like Charles had done. He institutes a form of martial law throughout the Commonwealth, and he even cancels Christmas.
So what's the difference on what that you're doing and what Charles I is doing? That is insane. What was the difference? Y'all both trying to be a dictator.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Oh,
They canceled Christmas?
In every way except the title which he politely refused, Cromwell had become King of England, and he rules as Lord Protector until his death in 1658. His son Richard is made his successor. But Richard Cromwell wasn't like his father. He was a simpler man who loved hunting and being outdoors. He had no desire to deal with all the BS it takes to run a country, and so he's forced to resign as Lord Protector within a year, and England falls into chaos. The experimental republic had failed, and so in May 1660, Parliament essentially admits it messed up and invites Charles II home to reclaim the throne. On May 29, 1660, his 30th birthday, the former crown prince rides into London and the city erupts into celebration. Bells ring from every church tower and crowds pack the streets to welcome home their king. Charles II is crowned, and he turns out to be everything England needs. He's charming and genuinely loved by the people in a way his father never was. He makes England fun again, bringing back the arts and theater, and he even uncancels Christmas. He gains the nickname the Merry Monarch, and in a gracious act, he issues a sweeping general pardon for nearly everyone involved in the English Civil Wars. But the key word here is nearly everyone. See, there was a small handful of people that Charles could simply not forgive. The men who had sentenced his father to death and ruined his life for a decade. And there was one man he hated more than all the rest. The former Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell. But there was just one problem. By this time, Cromwell had been dead for years. He passed away peacefully and got away with everything scot-free. This was something Charles could simply not accept. He would have no peace until Cromwell had faced justice. And so, on January 30th, 1661, the 12th anniversary of his father's execution, Charles II has the body of Oliver Cromwell exhumed from Westminster Abbey. The dried-up corpse of the former Lord Protector, along with 2 of his co-conspirators, who by the way had also died a long time ago and were also corpses, were brought to Tyburn and hanged in public. Throughout the day, onlookers from across...
What in the hell did I just hear? Bro, do you not know how much hate you gotta have in your heart to go dig up a motherfucking grave? 3 motherfuckers' graves? And just hang them? They're dead bodies? They've been dead for years?
London traveled to see the dead body of Cromwell hanging, finally receiving his punishment. As evening drew near, the executioner lowered the bodies and sloppily chopped off their heads. Cromwell's head is then shoved onto a 20-foot pole and carried through town to Westminster Hall, where it's mounted above its entrance as a warning to all of what will happen to anyone who kills their king. Now, that is some pretty extreme revenge as it is, but what happens after that to Oliver Cromwell's head is probably one of the weirdest stories in history. See, when Charles II dies and his brother James II takes over as king, Cromwell's head is still chilling up there 24 years later. But one night, a big storm snaps the spike, and the head falls off the roof and lands in the street. A security guard finds it rolling around, and for some reason, he takes it home. When officials realize Cromwell's head is missing, notices are put out for its return. But not wanting to incriminate himself as the person who stole it, the guard never returns it. The head goes missing for decades, until one day it shows up in a museum of oddities in the early 1700s, where it's displayed as Oliver Cromwell's head. Most people think it's a fake, and it stays there until the owner of the museum dies. The head is lost again for a few years, but emerges once more in the late 1700s. Now the property of a failed comedian named Samuel Russell, he brings it out at drinking parties, and he and his drunk friends throw it around like a football. Cromwell's head is then purchased by an investor and flipped for a much higher price to two entrepreneurs who set up a new exhibit that fails miserably. The head is then sold again to a man named Josiah Henry Wilkinson, who keeps it in his private collection and passes it down as a family heirloom for hundreds of years. Eventually, in the 1930s, the Wilkinson family brings the head in for scientific testing, and the now very damaged and shriveled up head on a stick is officially confirmed to indeed be the actual head of Oliver Cromwell.
Do that shit not stinks? Bro, I don't know how they react if I was in the afterlife. And this is how they treated my body after I died. Bro, this is a humiliation ritual.
The former Lord Protector of England. Finally, after generations in the Wilkinson collection, Horace Wilkinson decided to return Cromwell's head to be laid to rest. And so in 1960, the head of the former Lord Protector was entombed in a secret location on the campus of the University of Cambridge, after a nearly 300-year adventure separated from its body. Thanks again to MyHeritage for helping us make this.
Well, that certainly was a video, and what the fuck did I just watch? Anyway, you watching this on the tube, hit up LEK Big Wheel on Twitch. Also go to my Instagram. I made a new Instagram, LEK Big Wheel. And yeah, man, that's all I gotta say, man. But all right.
Yeah.